Hello everybody, and welcome to a video that I have been promising all of you for a few days now. If you follow my Twitter, then you know I've been talking about this game. If you listen to other videos of mine, I've probably brought it up at least once or twice. And if you follow my Twitch, which you should, then you know I've at least streamed it once during one of my sessions of Dark Souls 2 and so on. And that game is Archeage. Right quick, it's a Korean MMO out in Korea. It's been out, that makes sense, Matt. It's a Korean MMO out in Korea. Good job. It's a Korean MMO that's been out over in Korea for about 2 years now. And it is finally making its way westward, officially. It's exciting because I'm a huge MMO fan, but I've been putting a lot of time into it because there's been a lot of hype that's been coming with this game ever since the alpha has been released. If you have been following it, then you know getting into the alpha is no easy task. You either have to get a code from the developer or you need to pay $150 for the Founders Pack. Now, you can sign up for beta, so when beta weekends come up, you can play, or you can buy beta packs, which cost like $75 or $50 depending, or you can just wait for the game to come out if you're patient. The game is going to be a free-to-play game with a subscription model. It will not cost you any upfront money to buy, as far as I'm aware, which is kind of cool. I like that a lot. And I would suggest just being patient if you don't have the money to dole out. I would never suggest $150 for an alpha, but with $150, they are giving you quite a lot of stuff. They're giving you 3-month subscription, $75 of in-game currency, and a bunch of in-game stuff. But I am not one that... I'm lucky enough where I didn't have to do that. I got a code and we're all good. So, yeah, I want to talk to you guys about this particular game. Now, if you've followed me before and you've watched other one of my videos, I've covered both Final Fantasy XIV and I've covered Elder Scrolls Online. And I talk a little bit about how the MMO genre is one of my favorite genres because I kind of grew up with it. Well, I didn't really grow up with it, but I dove in its earlier infancy stage. My very first MMO was Star Wars Galaxies. I adored that game until Sony Online broke it. And I've kind of been looking for a game to recapture that love for MMOs again. I mean, the last one that I really truly loved, I think, was World of Warcraft, but that even ran its course, and I will probably return for Warlords of Draenor just to kind of run through the content, and then just like every other time I play, I will probably be done with it. Just another disclaimer, in the background you're going to be seeing some gameplay. It's just me doing some dungeon stuff, not dungeon stuff, just some PvE stuff, some questing stuff. Nothing spectacular. I'm not looking to showcase anything particular while I talk about my first impressions, so don't look for anything in particular here. It's to show the gameplay, to show the game so you guys know what it looks like and what I'm talking about. So, if you follow me, then you know I'm really excited about Archeage. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why, but I'm not going to just talk about this game is going to be great or start hyping up the hype train. Because there are aspects, there's a few aspects of this game that I'm not a huge fan of so far. And I'm definitely going to talk about that. And actually I'm going to talk about those first because they're probably the earliest things you're going to encounter before you realize the depth that this game has. So, in my opinion, one of the most important things in MMO is to hook a player early. You want them interested in your game right away. You want them to be having fun. You want them to be kind of diving in and enjoying the system immediately. Unfortunately, Archeage is an MMO that is incredibly deep and incredibly open, but it does not come across that way right away. I've put about 5 to 6 hours into it, and only now am I starting to see the openness that this game has. And we're going to talk about that, obviously, when we get there. But right away, the game feels like a very generic MMO. The opening quest is forgettable. There's no voice acting, so that's definitely kind of outdated, the fact that there is no voice acting in the game. And it's very much fetch questy. There's go kill these X amount of enemies and bring me this X amount of things back, go fetch this, go escort this guy this way. It is so tried and true MMO formula as far as the PvE aspect is concerned that it can give a bad impression in my opinion. Because this game is not your typical MMO, to open up as a typical MMO is actually doing the game a disservice, and I'm not a huge fan of that. The PvE questing aspect is so boring and vanilla that you only need to push through it, because if you don't push through the original quest or the main story quest line, you're not going to get a lot of the things that come along with it. For instance, in order to get your first glider, which is a mechanical thing that helps you like traverse the land quicker, you need to do the main story quest. Same thing with your mount, same thing with a donkey, and a couple other very important things. It's almost as though they force you to do the main storyline, even though the main storyline or the main quest line is incredibly boring, on top of all the other quests that you come alongside it, like every other MMO. In fact, this game does exactly what other games do, where it's quest hubs. You go to an area, the main quest is going to lead you to an area which will have a hub where you grab about 5 to 10 other quests, you go in the zone, you do all those quests, you come hand them back in, you do phase 2 if there's more quests sitting around, until you finish up the area and you move on. It is incredibly linear in that regard. Not a big fan of that. Visually, we're going to talk here a little bit, is the game as well is not incredibly wonderful. In my opinion, actually, the game, with the saving grace of a couple of moments, looks passable. It is not beautiful by any stretch. It definitely looks like it's 2 years old, and if you're not a fan of Korean MMO style of graphics, this game is not going to win you over. It is incredibly Korean in design as far as aesthetics are concerned. Now, I say in design as far as aesthetics because, in my opinion, a lot of Korean MMOs are very grindy, and Archeage, though it does have its grindy tendencies, is not nearly as grindy as something like Lineage 2, or at least in my opinion. The landscape in particular I have a big gripe with, because what I've seen so far in my time playing has been very bland. The lands around are very generic, open. There's not a lot of things to see. In fact, you see a lot of rolling hills and plains, but there's not a lot of vegetation. There's not a lot of buildings. The detail in the world is lacking. Unlike something where World of Warcraft or WildStar is concerned, where there's a whole lot of cool stuff going on all the time. I mean, look at the very first expansion for World of Warcraft, the Burning Crusade. The whole world was like crazy cool to just look up in the sky and see all the insanity that's going on. Archeage is on the other end of the spectrum. It maintains a more realistic fantasy feel as opposed to fantastical fantasy feel. And though that can be cool, and I do enjoy games that do that, there's just not a lot here to look at. It's a very boring-ish kind of game to look at. Now, I have seen later zones through videos and research, and there is some cool stuff later on. But for the most part, I would say the game kind of hits this middling ground of visual style. The combat system itself is also very tried and true. It's a tab targeting system with a bit of a combo mechanic going on. When I say combo mechanic, I mean certain spells do end up chaining together with other spells to do extra damage. I don't want to get too in-depth with it, but it does add a nice little twist to it, but it's still a tab targeting system. And as far as the class system is concerned, it's more along the lines of something like, I guess Rift would be the closest thing. What you do is, there are 10 classes, and between levels 1 and 15, you pick 3 of them, and you combine the 3 classes, and they become 1 class. So for instance, I have Sorcerer class, Occultist class, and basically the Rogue class, and together they create the Grim Reaper class. And you get all access to all of their abilities, and you kind of become this hybrid thing, I guess, is the best way to put it. Other abilities from other classes combo and synergize well with other abilities. For instance, one of my rogue abilities allows my Sorcerer Fireball to not have a cast time after I use it. So there is cross-class, obviously, mechanics there because you kind of have to pick 3 classes. It's really cool. It's something that I'd like to talk a little bit more about in another video. But as far as the way combat works inherently, it's still very tab targeting. But I'm still really enjoying the game, and I'm still very excited for it. And you might be asking, well, what you just described, Mathis, was incredibly boring sounding and incredibly cliche. Why are you excited? And that's a very fair and valid question to ask, and I'm here to answer it. So the thing Archeage does, and what it's all about, is its sandbox elements. And a lot of people are calling it a sand park or a theme box, because it combines both theme park MMOs. For those who don't know, a theme park MMO is something like World of Warcraft, and it takes sandbox elements from sandbox MMOs. EVE Online is probably the pinnacle of a sandbox MMO. Star Wars Galaxies was more sandbox than theme park back in the day, and it tries to push them together, and more or less has pretty damn good success about it. What this game is all about is actually, it's very player driven, which I love. The economy, from what I can tell and what I've seen, is all player driven. Unlike WoW, where most of the good gear comes from, say, dungeon runs and raids, where the big boss is going to drop something rare, most of the good gear is actually going to come from players crafting it. So if there's a player on your server who is known for crafting the best gear, he could very well run the market there. He could dictate what's going to cost what on your server, so long as he is, the best crafter out there. Already in the alpha, I am seeing guilds dedicated to crafting. There are crafting and trading guilds. That's what they're there for. You can level up crafting. You get experience from crafting. You get experience from harvesting and having farms and stuff. The game also lets you have a house. You can have a house and a farm. If you need certain supplies, you can grow those supplies so long as you have the necessary things to grow them, which will then allow you to make those rare items. Where the game really shines outside of the fact that it's player-focused economy is that the world itself really shifts depending on what the players are doing. And I'm not talking about like storyline shift. I'm talking about the shift of power. So the world is separated into two major continents, East and West, very much Horde and Alliance in that way. And they're at war. Makes sense. There are PvP zones. It's very much open world PvP, by the way. And there are zones, once you hit level 30, 25 to 30-ish, where the only places to quest are PvP driven. If you are not a fan of PvP, I'm telling you, you're going to hate Archeage. Don't bother. It's not even worth it. And that's just your warning now. So, yeah, so the game is very PvP driven, and there are zones that are focused on PvP, and depending on what, where in the zone you are is going to determine the likelihood of getting ganked, etc., etc., etc. Makes sense. But there's another thing that really makes this game interesting, and this is the part that really catches me, the part that I like a lot. So in order to make some of the rarest buildings in the world, in order to make some of the rarest equipment or whatever, you need something called Guildastars. Guildastars can be acquired in a few different ways, but the most common and the most used way is a trade route. And a trade route is grabbing a package from an NPC in Area A and transferring it to Area B, C, D, or E, depending. What that depending is depending on your choice. The further away you bring said item, the more Guildastars you're going to get. The reason for that is that particular area may not have as many of this item that you're bringing as where you're getting it from. It's kind of a supply and demand. Just as a general example, I'm taking a package of sugar from the south all the way to the north. Up north, they can't grow sugar. It's impossible. They need the sugar more than anybody. So bringing it north is going to give you more Guildastars than, say, bringing it maybe like a little bit further north as opposed to all the way north. Because if you're only bringing it a little bit further north, hey, these people don't live that far away from where the sugar is manufactured in the first place. They can get it really easy, and they're not going to pay you all that much. They could be like, why would I bother paying you a ton of Guildastars if I can walk down there myself and get it? Makes sense. Now that you could also bring it cross-continent. You can get boats in this game, and I'm not going to get into the sea combat because I've watched a lot of it, but I haven't experienced it yet. But the sea combat, you basically can sail across the ocean in your ship and bring it to another continent and trade it there for even more Guildastars. And those Guildastars are then used to purchase like really cool houses, really important weaponry, really not weaponry, like really important mansions, really rare like castles, and a bunch of other things. What's cool though is that when you are bringing these trade things, your character moves at a very slow pace. Really slow pace, and you need either a donkey or a tractor to bring it any faster, but you're still not moving that fast. Players can then gank you along the way. Your faction too can gank you, and they can kill you and take your trade and go finish it and hand it in themselves for the Guildastars. What that means is that you could be super close to handing it in, and if you're not paying attention or you don't have friends guarding you, you can get ganked right at the guy to hand him in, and that person could take him and hand him in right there and get the Guildastars. It doesn't matter. Which opens up this whole aspect of world PvP, of this risk versus reward that is lacking a lot of other modern day MMOs. It adds a lot of tension to the game. What's also awesome is that if somebody from your own faction attacks you, you can actually report them. Not report them to like the devs and like he griefed me, please ban him. No, there's actually a crime system in the game where you can actually report their crime of murder. And you just go up to the blood spot that they killed you at, and you can just click on it, reports them. They then get crime points, and there's this whole judicial system within the game where criminals can get pulled into court. There is a jury of players that randomly get pulled in. You can deny if you don't want to be part of the jury. You can say no, but you get randomly pulled in a judge, and it is up to the jury and the judge to deem whether this player is guilty of the crimes he's being presented with or not. If he is deemed guilty, he goes to prison, where he has two choices essentially. Work off the crime points by doing like manual labor, essentially really tedious mini games, or he can break out of prison where he'll get a debuff for a little while, but he'll still maintain his crime points. What do crime points do? Well, essentially, what'll happen is if you accumulate enough crime points, you will then be kicked out of your faction. It's like getting kicked out of the Horde or the Alliance. You actually get kicked out of your faction if you accumulate enough crime points. The only place you're welcome is a little island in the ocean that is known as the Pirate Island. And all players who are kicked out of the faction become pirates, and they are only allowed on that island with any degree of safety. Remote safety. I'm assuming pirates can attack other pirates. I don't know. Again, what is so exciting about this game is the risk versus reward. There's so many things involved in this game that it's such a, like I said, a sandboxy MMO that it drags me in. There's a whole northern continent where guilds can actually claim spots on that continent and place castles. That castle, you can then have players of the guild build houses there. And as the lord of the castle, or as the guild leader, you can set a tax. And for all players who put houses there, they pay you, the lord, a set amount of tax. Other castles and other guilds can go to war with you, and they can attack your castle and get money from doing so. And you can attack other castles as well. There's a whole system for that. I'm not going to get into that right now. And there is a system for actually placing the castle down. It's not like I claim this land as my castle. What happens is you go to that island, which is open PvP zone, by the way, and in order to place the castle, the guild leader has to sit there for 30 minutes to cast a spell to claim that land as his. Now, there are things I'm told that that essentially speed that up. But what that means is that you're going to want your guild there protecting you, because enemy guilds or rival guilds can come and attack you to prevent you from putting that castle down. Again, very player driven, very player focused. And I guess that's what I'm getting at. With this game, it's not the PvE aspect that really catches my eye here, because the PvE I feel like is more of a means to an end for the developers. It's the PvP aspect and the open world aspect that really drives me. I mean, the idea of being able to get on a ship, because there are a ton of different ships, and you can own a ship and you can sail the open seas, and get on there with a few of my friends or a few guild mates and sail the ocean as a pirate, or just being a pirate and attacking other player ships to take their goods and like protect the waters. That really, really, really attracts me. I've read stories of there was a pirate guild. They were all kicked out of their faction that essentially banded together on the pirate island and formed their own pirate guild. And they roamed the open seas and attacked anybody that wasn't paying them protection money. So they kind of became the mafia of the open waters. If you were not paying them protection money, like as a guild or whatever, they openly would attack you, kill you, and take everything you had on your ship. Now, you can't loot a player. It's not that super hardcore. It's not EVE open. It's more of a middling grounds there. So if you had to like trade goods and stuff, they could take you. They would take it and they would destroy your ship. That's awesome. The ability to give a player an immense amount of freedom to attack whoever and run the world as they see fit is how MMOs, or the direction MMOs I think should take. Theme park MMOs have kind of run their course, in my opinion. No game is going to do a theme park MMO like World of Warcraft. WildStar might be the closest thing in a long time to maybe compete with WoW, but they don't have over 10 years of development time behind them like World of Warcraft does. And when Warlords of Draenor comes out, it's going to be super hard to compete with that. Say what you will, but the number of times I've heard this game is going to be the WoW killer, and then it ends up not being the WoW killer, are more than I can count. So to say WildStar is going to be that, I have such apprehension about that. I don't think Archeage is going to be a WoW killer. I think Archeage is going to draw in the type of gamer like me, the gamer who's been ever since like Star Wars Galaxies or any other back in the day sandbox MMO, who's been looking for a more fantasy style sandbox open world game that also happens to be an MMORPG. I think this is one of the games that's really going to start to attract them. And it would do you well to maybe keep your eye on this game. I really think it has a lot of potential. It really, I don't know. It's just something this game is doing right. And there's a lot of openness. Like I said, if I didn't want to fight a day in my life and I wanted to just be a farmer who just grew rare materials and sold them on the market and was like the king of the rare material market, you can do that in this game. If I just wanted to be a player who roamed the open seas and attacked everybody who came by, you can do that. If I just wanted to be a fisherman and go in the open waters and fish, you can do that. The options are wide, and that is something that is lacking in MMOs nowadays. So I'm curious if you guys want to see more on Archeage. If you do, I would suggest leaving it in the comment section. Let me know you want to see more. This is, again, just kind of first impressions of what I've played. I'm enjoying my time with it so far. If you haven't yet, I would suggest following me on Twitch. The link is always in the description. Because when I stream, it's usually this and Dark Souls 2. So if you have an interest in any one of those games, I would suggest following me, as well as other games, of course. And I'd be curious to see what you guys think of the game so far. Again, this has been a first impressions. I'm impressed with it so far. I do think the early game and the PvP aspects are a little bit on the weaker side, but I think what the game has potential to do and what it's like later on is where its strengths are. And I wish if it was possible, they could change the opening to the game to not be so restrictive and so narrow. Either way, I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm curious what you guys think of Archeage, or if any more of you guys are excited as I am. And as always, I'll see all you guys next time. Bye-bye.